Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting how it all works together. But anyway, you want to go ahead and talk Super Sons?
Let's do it.
Alright. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Partu. Joining me today is...
Steve Baxi.
the one, the only, the true hero. So today we're doing a review of a movie that, like, to me this feels like it just came out, but it's actually from 2022. Time has no meaning, and
You're telling me it's not still 2022?
no, I mean, I'm still like sitting over here like it's 2020, right?
It's 2019.
Yeah. So this came out, a couple years ago now, and I'd not really gotten around to watching it, and after watching it, I kind of realized why, and it's because every other one of these DC animated movies that have come out in the last couple years has been, like, if not outright bad, super disappointing, or just pissed me the fuck off. Example is we reviewed Green Lantern Beware My Power, which came out the same year as this, and we talked about how it was terrible, and it might be one of the most, like, universally panned things we've ever done on this show. Of just, like, a straight hour of us just shitting on a movie. And then...
more thought into it than the writers.
Yeah, and then recently, I was wanting to, check out another one of these, because it was on Max, and it was the Justice League War World one, and... like, I'm watching the first, like, opening bit of that with, like, Wonder Woman in the Old West and Jonah Hex, and I'm like, okay, that's an interesting premise. And then Wonder Woman just starts shooting people with a gun, and I'm like, I fucking hate this. This is terrible. What the actual fuck? And I just didn't even bother finishing that. So I was kind of like, with how emotionally invested I am in Super Sons, I really wasn't looking forward to this. I was kind of like, I don't know if this is going to be good. This seems like it might be rough given the history of these. And then I watched it with Leah the other day because we just picked it up at the library. And I figured, what are the chances? So I grabbed it. Funny because it's on Max and I have Max, so I could watch it that way. But I grabbed it from the library on Blu-ray, and
Support your local libraries.
yeah, and decided to watch it with Leah. And it was just a fucking magical time. We had such a good time watching this movie. Leah got so excited every time Superman was on screen. The Starro bits, which I was worried was going to be like a little too scary for her, as some of them were happening, she was just like fascinated by, and we turned it into a game of like, do you have a star in your mouth? And so we had to, like, open our mouths at each other to check for stars. And that was really funny when my mom came over later that day and she asked her to check. And then just, I don't know, man, just watching this, it just brought me back to reading that first initial arc of Super Sons. And, the world was in a shit place then, it's in a shit place now. But just, it made me, like, so... happy and filled me with like just a joy that I haven't experienced in quite the same way or hit on the same way as when I did read that initial run of the comics. And it's kind of funny to think back on those now, because during that initial wave of the Super Sons book was when they were advertising the Bendis is coming in the comics too. And I remember at the time it was like kind of hype, but like in retrospect as a Super Sons fan, it was it was a warning of everything we were going to lose. And honestly, I don't know, man. There's something about Damian Wayne and John Kent just having a dynamic, and it's just like an all-timer. It's just as good as Batman and Superman. It's just as good as your Green Lantern, Green Arrow. It's just fucking peanut butter and jelly, man. I love it. I say that as someone that is allergic to peanuts, but you know what I mean. I fucking love it, and getting to see it in animation, getting to see it with, like, you know, acting and stuff. I just had such a fucking good time with this movie, and I really, really fucking enjoyed it. It was like, this is what these films should always be doing. It's back. So all that being said, I told Steve we'd be talking about this, and he's like, oh, I've got nothing to say, apparently, so let's throw it over to Steve. What do you think of Super Sons?
This is a movie for babies.
Oh, you're mean.
I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I mean, like, literally, this is a movie aimed at children. And if you have a child, as you do, and you watch it with your child, you're going to have a good time. But, like, there is no reason to watch this movie beyond the age of, like, 7.
Fuck off.
I did not care one bit watching this movie. It's not bad, obviously. It's just, like, it's not aimed at me. It's a movie where Damien and John get into hijinks, and it's very kid-friendly, and it's got some, like, spooky bits, like when the Star comes out of Batman's mouth for the first time. Like, that's kind of cool. But, like, it's very tame, it's very safe, it's very predictable and quippy. It reminds me of a lot of, like, the original Cartoon Network movies that would come on when I was a kid watching Cartoon Network at, like, 7 or 8 years old. It's not bad. It's just, it's a kids movie. It's a kids movie where Damien and John go on adventures together. And I have nothing more to say about it beyond that because I just didn't really have any reaction to it. My one negative is I don't really like the voice acting for a majority of the cast. I think Troy Baker Batman's pretty stale and boring, but I feel the same way about whoever plays Superman. I think he just kind of comes off as kind of stoic for me. So a lot of the voice acting just doesn't hit for me, and that kind of makes it harder to sit through. There are bits here and there that are fun, like John pointing out that Bat Cow needs to be milked, and then he just hands Batman a bucket of milk. Like, that was pretty funny. But, like, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, this is a kids movie, and that's fine. But I don't really watch a lot of kids movies.
I don't know. I guess I see where you're coming from. But on a certain point, I think that's really refreshing to me. We've talked about it a lot over the years where, like, it's not that I don't appreciate something being super, like, deconstructive of characters and trying to be, like, really introspective, but I think there's, like, too much of that going on. I feel like everyone's trying to do it constantly, and we've forgotten how to just fucking tell a goddamn story that's meant to be entertaining. I'm not saying you can't do both, but sometimes I think that, like, you get kind of lost in the introspection and you end up just not doing anything with the character, really. You're not adding to anything. You're just sitting there kind of mental masturbation. And that kind of bothers me. So when something like this comes along and it is fun, it's enjoyable, it's just good, and it's, yeah, you're right, there's really not a lot to this movie, but I think that's, like, the best thing about it, is it is just a fun, cool movie. Like, I've talked about this again, we were just talking about the Batman before we started the episode, and, like, one of the problems with that movie is, like, I can't honestly imagine that kids like that fucking movie, because it's so goddamn boring. And it's trying to be this, like, really deep introspective thing, and it's trying to be this, like, gritty dark detective movie, and I'm like, you know, Batman is a character that was created for children. like, is it so wrong to just want a Batman movie to be accessible to the audience it was originally created for? And it's I fully acknowledge the hypocrisy that I sound like right now, given that this is Alan Moore's argument. and I'm like famous Alan Moore hater Ian Harrington. But my problem's never been with the idea that, yeah, some of these kids' characters should be doing stories that are for kids. My problem's been that, like, fucking Alan Moore, why don't you write stories that are for kids then, instead of throwing, like, a rape scene into every possible book you could write? But no, I do legitimately think that just making something that is meant to be fun, meant to be enjoyable, not really meant to be all that deep, is kind of what these characters were initially created for. And that's kind of the strength of this movie, for doing something like that and doing it competently, doing it not just competently but well.
I hear what you're saying, and I get that. I think my problem is what you're describing was definitely a thing for a long period of time. I think now the context we're in, we're actually on the opposite end of that, where we do so many things that feel really safe and want to preserve the fantasy of the characters in a way where we kind of just make them too precious. Because you talk about the Batman coming out in 2022, but I mean, you know all the other Batman movies that have come out in and around that? I mean, Scooby-Doo and Batman Brave and the Bold, Merry Little Batman, where Damien is trying to save Christmas, all the like 4 or 5 Batman Unlimited movies, the Batmobile kid-friendly, our cartoon show that's on HBO Max where everyone's a car.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have kind of moved past what you're describing. And there is room to have a balance for both, but I think we've kind of tipped the scales now where, like, even when you like go and like pick up a DC comic like today, a lot of it is just kind of like overly safe, overly precious, overly kind of, we can't let these characters have any sort of meaningful consequence. Everything's got to be resolved at the end of the issue. No one can have any kind of like trauma or any sort of interesting character trait. They all just kind of have to be like riffs and jokes and make everything kind of young adult friendly. I mean, DC and Marvel's like biggest lines right now are young adult graphic novels. I mean, the young adult Miles Morales comic sold more than any other Marvel comic has in the last 2 or 3 years. So I get what you're saying, but I feel like if you want that, there's a lot of that. And I think the part of the reason I didn't like this movie very much is it's just kind of that. And I mean, for doing that, it's not bad. It's not executed in a bad way. But like when I go and pick a movie to watch, I'm going to pick something that I feel like I can engage with on my level. And this
So
is just
what you're saying
that.
is
Like,
just my level is children's movies, and your level's just so far above me. Is that what you're
No,
saying, Steve?
no,
It
no,
feels like that's what
I-
you're saying. I think you're saying that to
No.
everyone that's watched this and enjoyed it. I think Steve is
I'm
saying that
saying-
he's just so far above all of us.
I'm saying you have a kid, and you showing this to your kid is a special, important, magical moment like you described. If I had a little Leah and we were checking for stars in our mouths, this would be my favorite thing ever. But I don't. I'm like 29 years old watching this alone in my apartment with my espresso, right? Like, this is just not made for me. I don't get anything out of this. This is like if I went to the theater to go watch the Super Pets movie that came out like 2 years ago. Like, I could do that. I don't know why I would, but I could. It's just not my. It's not a movie that is made to entertain. It's not made to entertain me, because it is aimed at kids, and it's aimed at people who want what you're describing, which is things that are fun, that treat the characters in a way that can be refreshing and different from all the dark stuff that we do all the time. But that's just not something I'm interested in watching.
I mean, I guess that's fair. Like, obviously, different strokes for different folks, and of course, Steve Baxley wants, the most tragic and horrendous treatment to all of his characters, so you can relate.
Of course.
I will say I wasn't actually planning to watch this with Leah initially. I saw it at the library. I'm like, all right, well, we'll give this one a shot. And again, you're probably right that there has been more of a swing to kind of even things out, and not make stuff so fucking just adults, like adult hijacking of these characters that should be, if not for all ages, for children. Like very grim darking everything, and I think fucking Bruce Timm of all people has kind of been at the head of that, especially as you've seen just the intense like sexualization and needless grittiness introduced in some of these movies that make them kind of laughable. Like the fucking 2017 Harley Quinn movie.
Oh God, that movie's so bad.
Yeah, exactly. and so
It's
like
unwatchable.
thank you. So like that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about when I talk about these like overly adult focused things. And so you're probably right that there has been more of a swing back to even it out a little bit, maybe even going to more of a young adult audience. Though I would push back on it a little bit because that's just not what I've seen. Like, we watched the Green Lantern one, and that one was a little bit more middle of the road, but it still had some like pretty intense violence, kind of pushing the level of the PG-13 for an animated film. Not like so far beyond, but definitely trying to get away with as much as it could. The Justice League War World movie, which again, contemporary, I think that might be the most recent of these animated movies. Really fucking violent. Like I said, Wonder Woman starts shooting people, and it's not like she just shoots a gun and a guy falls off in the distance. Like, you see the bullet come out of the fucking skull and shit. Blood everywhere. And it's just not... That to me is not what I would consider, like, family friendly. That to me is what I would begin to consider some of that, like, overly gritty, overly dark, attempting to be adult, but just being immature in the process.
Well, I guess what I would say to push back just a little bit is I think these things are a little bit more frequent. They're just sandwiched in between other stuff, and I think this is sort of the same argument we get into when we talk about things like DC losing everyone's goodwill when they make a DC Universe movie and then releasing like a standalone movie that gets critically acclaimed. Like how you go from Joker to Zack Snyder Justice League, you know, a movie everybody loves and then a movie everybody hates kind of thing. But with the DC animated movies, right? Like 2018, you had DC Superhero Girls. 2019, you had Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans. 2020 was the 1 year where you didn't have anything that was like kid friendly, but then after that, it's just kind of a constant stream of Teen Titans Go and DC Superhero Girls Mayhem in the Multiverse, Batman and Superman Battle of the Super Sons, Justice League X Ruby Part 1 and Part 2, Scooby-Doo and Crypto 2, Merry Little Batman. Like, these are all within the last 3 or 4 years. So I think there is quite a few of these. So I don't feel like this movie in particular is breaking any sort of trends by existing. I think it is actually just kind of falling into a lot of what we're doing. And that's not even including the stuff that's going on in the comics now that feels kind of this caliber to me, where it just sort of seems like we don't want to continue to do the grimdark stuff, or fans and wholesale Twitter mobs do not like when we do darker stuff with the characters. So let's push back and do things that are more fun, more kid-friendly, more kind of all ages or young adult oriented. I mean, the most popular comic at DC right now that's won and been nominated for multiple Eisners that everyone and their mother is reading and loving except me is fucking Nightwing by Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo. And that book is a very similar flavor to this, where it's got arcs that are kind of inconsequential. It's got little mini episodes of things happening. It's got a lot of jokes to it. It's got a little puppy that's missing a leg. It's got a lot of little dates and stuff going on. It's fine. You know, like there's nothing wrong if you like that kind of thing, but the more of it that I am inundated with it, the more I lose interest in it. And I think it's kind of the opposite of what you're having, where like you go back to back from like the Joker movie to the Batman, and I see what you mean of like, why do we have to do it like this? Why can't the Joker just tell jokes?
Why
And I
can't the
sympathize
Joker
with
be
that.
funny?
Yeah,
A
and
video
I and
essay
I
by Ian Harrington coming soon.
and I 100% sympathize with that notion. To kind of bring back your Alan Moore comparison, the thing Alan Moore talks a lot about is not just comics being for kids, but like this sort of two-pronged problem of adults having really extreme opinions about something made for children, and comics as a disposable medium for people who don't have a lot of money that can get entertainment that's not as expensive as going to the movies or going out or something, becoming something that is highly collectible. So the idea that comics have been priced out of the lower class and are filled now with 30-year-old men wanting to have extreme opinions about kids characters. He's concerned about sort of the infantilizing effect, which I think is different from what you're talking about, because I don't think you have that problem. I think you more specifically have the problem of like, there's a lot of comics out there, but there isn't enough that sort of appeals to the different kinds of people who want to engage with them. You have the people that want dark and gritty stuff, but you also equally have stuff that you want to share with your kid that is readable and understandable without being overly grim and dark. And I understand that that's not a balance that the industry strikes very well in general. But in this present moment, I feel like it's striking that balance pretty well, if not more so favoring where you're going. And that's just why I don't love this movie, because it just sort of feels like more of that stuff. But getting into the movie specifically, instead of just talking around it, I think the big thing for me that I just didn't like is I just don't like John.
Oh.
I think I think he reads in this movie too much as just generic child protagonist. He has this thing early on in the movie about his dad not being there and for his baseball game, and not understanding why a reporter has to be away all the time. And you get like this big moment early on where Superman reveals himself as like, I'm Superman, I'm your dad, this is why I'm never around. And that's fine, but it almost feels like the movie is setting up this conflict in the beginning about John feeling neglected by his dad, that then it just kind of resolves super quick, and then the whole rest of the movie's not about that, and that seems strange to me. So I just had a really hard time understanding what John's arc was, or what he was really after, aside from just befriending Damien.
I guess I could see that. I do think this is that problem that some of these movies do run into, where they're trying to adapt something that isn't even actually a direct adaptation. It's just kind of like a nebulous, like, John's origin in the comics is so fucking weird and convoluted as shit, so trying to put that into a streamlined way and also work it into the movie is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. Personally, I didn't have the problem you're talking about, but I can see what you're saying and how it how that section of, like, quote unquote John's origin isn't really folded in as neatly to the rest of the plot of the movie. It feels like kind of just like an opening act that doesn't really connect to anything beyond just, and now John is here. This is the sequence of events kind of thing. Personally, I just didn't feel that way because I'm just kind of used to John's origins kind of fucky. And it's funny because I really, really like John and Damien as a duo. And I could maybe agree that John doesn't have much of an interesting character on his own outside of that dynamic with Damien. Similar to, I brought it up earlier, the Green Lantern, Green Arrow thing, where, like, kind of everyone universally agrees that, like, Green Lantern and Green Arrow is just such a fucking iconic duo and such, like, an all-time great comic dynamic. But then all at the same time, people are all like, but Hal Jordan just has no character. And I'm like, for Silver Age, no, that's fair. He is a very, very generic character. And so kind of putting him there and using him as a voice box to make a more interesting, more well-rounded character, have someone to bounce off of, kind of gives him stuff via osmosis. And I kind of think that's what happens with John. Is Damien is a really well-rounded, really, really interesting character, but putting him with someone like John, who you just kind of need the broad strokes of, gives Damien a lot of interesting stuff to do. Makes Damien, enriches his character in a big way, I feel. But also because of that dynamic, a lot of the goodwill and a lot of the goodwill is rubbing off on John, and he is becoming more well-rounded as a result. Is something that I think is, at least that's kind of my diagnosis of Super Sons, and I think this movie is just an example of that more than it is doing it right or wrong. It is just continuing that trend.
And I guess that's the other thing that's interesting is, like, I just don't really care for Super Sons as a concept.
Fuck.
So, like, it's just not really, like, I get what you're saying, but I'm like, I'm not gonna now go out of my way to read Super Sons comics. I just am not. Damien is more, he's got more of a personality in this movie than John does. I think with Damien, what kind of ends up bothering me is, when Morrison created Damien, he goes on a very definite arc. And after Morrison kills him off, there was, like, very little reason to keep Damien around because he kind of served his narrative purpose. And then when DC brought him back, there was a lot of attempts by other writers to try and figure out, like, okay, what do we do with Damien now? And since then, we've done stuff with him that's good and interesting. Like, I think the Joshua Williamson Robin ongoing that was going for a bit, where he basically just turns him into a shonen protag doing a tournament arc, was really good and really fun to read. And then obviously Tom King writes a really great Damien, but you do see a lot of other people kind of just writing Damien as the what if Batman, but he is more overtly a jerk. Mm-hmm. What if Batman, but like he's got the patience of a child. And that's fine as a bit, but Morrison grew out of that with Damien really quick. And when someone like Tom King writes Damien, he's not really doing that either. He's doing more of what Morrison did, which is he's got all the competence in the world of Batman, but they've got the same insecurity of their parents' approval. Batman can never have it because his parents are dead, so he has to figure out what to do with his life. Damien, on the other hand, has a dad, and he struggles to figure out what he can do to get his dad's approval now that he's there, without at the same time sacrificing what he wants to do. And that, again, kind of becomes the whole thing Joshua Williams does with the Robin ongoing, of like, how does Damien decide to be his own person and make his dad proud? And I feel like when Damien just kind of gets reduced to a bit part of being like, of John being the straight man and Damien being the wild card, there's just not anything particularly interesting for me outside of just like skets. You know, like if John and Damien were like in a series of like SNL bits, they'd be pretty funny, and I'd be here for it. But 80 minutes of it is just too much for me.
This fucking battle. I wasn't prepared for this. I thought you'd like, hey, it's just a boring movie, or I just didn't think it was fun. But no, you're just like, this movie is the scum of the earth.
I'm not trying to be that harsh on it. I'm not even trying to like diss you for liking it. I'm just trying to say like this is not my kind of movie.
Good movies, got it. You want shit movies. That's why you watch fucking Joker and shit. Got it. I'm lashing out. I'm not sorry, but I'm just going to acknowledge that I'm lashing out.
I'm not gonna say on any sort of like definitive level this is a bad movie, because it's not. It's entirely serviceable. It's just the thing that it is servicing is not me. Fair
enough. No, I mean, I like Damien in this. I think it's pulling a couple of the cues from the Super Son books. The one that I immediately recognized and I think was like really interesting is Damien is very insecure and has a significant problem socializing and making friends. And he knows that about himself, so he's like, he wants to, but he's also not willing to compromise who he is in the process. And so you kind of get like a moment of that with the Teen Titans, right? Where he's on the phone with Cassie and he's like semi-flirting, which was an interesting ship dynamic I don't think I've seen anyone try to attempt before. I love the Supergirl crush way back in the day, but that ship is fucking sailed. No one besides me is on to that one.
That was a JMS comic, right?
I don't think it was JMS. I don't know. It was a Superman Batman comic. I don't remember if it was JMS.
Okay. I remember the cover for that too. It was really cute.
I know. I love the idea of Damian having a crush on Supergirl. It's like way out of his league kind of thing. It was beautiful.
Also, probably just like out of his age range, but it's great. It's like your first little sexual awakening. It's adorable.
It's like when you got a crush on your babysitter. You know?
Yeah, exactly. It's great.
It's completely out of his league. But anyway, so like him kind of trying to get in with the Titans and like trying to act like he's still better than it then and stuff, but he's clearly does want it, even though he's not saying that he wants it. Just the way in which they've written the scene shows that he wants to be a Titan and kind of have everything that comes with it. And then he's rejected from that. Meanwhile, John's there, and John is looking for a way to get into this world. They both want the same thing, just in they're at very different stages of it. Damien feels like he's literally born into it. He deserves it by right, and John is kind of like so shocked and overwhelmed by the opportunity that he's like, oh no, of course I've got to do it now. I've got to be in it. And all he's faced so far up to that point is just like immediate rejection. And so I just thought that was like a really great, kind of kinship that they had together, especially with the way that Damien's just such a reckless fucking dick with him. Just, extreme stress, right. Let's see if you can fly. Push. That's so great to me. I fucking adore that kind of shit because he's just a fucking kid, and that's a very like kid way of doing a thing. And the fact that it doesn't work and that Superman comes to save him, I thought was really cute. If John has an arc in here, I think that scene kind of sets up what it is. It's, the idea of like, oh, extreme stress will unlock his powers. Well, if your dad's Superman, you can never really be stressed because he's always going to be there to come and save you. So what happens when he can't? What happens when Superman is taken out of the picture? What happens when Superman is controlled by something else? And you see it. John is able to rise up and is able to, conquer the day and master his powers and come to them in his own right and save people and help. And that's kind of beautiful. And I think that's all basically tied up with a really nice bow with the, what's the word I want here? With the idea of repetition and the visual metaphor of hitting the baseball. So you have it early in the movie before he even gets any of his powers and he can't hit the ball. And it's becomes a manifestation of he's lacking a confidence in himself because he doesn't have a father figure there. He's not believing that he's deserving of it. He's not believing that he can hit the ball because he just thinks he's not good enough. And then throughout the movie, he proves to himself he becomes good enough. And then he's able to hit the ball when it's fucking his dad pitching Starro at him. So I thought it was a fucking beautiful scene, and I'd say that is John's arc in the movie.
I mean, you're not wrong. It's just, that's also a very traditional kids movie kind of story to set up. I'm sorry, but like...
Well, you said... Well, hold on. But you said he had no arc. And so then he has an arc.
you're making an argument for what his arc could be. I'm saying I wasn't convinced by that being what the movie's about at the end of the day.
Okay.
I think the origin stuff at the beginning and where the movie goes, the rest of it still have like a disconnect, like you talked about. I could see that being his arc, but I also still kind of feel like at the end of the day, it's a very bare bones plot that you see in like hundreds of kids movies. Like, like it's a Kids Next Door kind of plot, in my opinion. And that's not a bad thing, but like, I resist giving it any more credit than they outlined a story. I'm
Next
sorry.
time you
It's
pick
just...
a fucking artsy fartsy thing, I'm just gonna shit on it. Like, even if I enjoyed it, I'm just gonna fucking drop trowel and shit on it. And I'm not gonna apologize. I'm not gonna feel
I'm
bad.
sorry.
I can't
don't know
wait
what
till
you want me
Joker
to
2 comes out, and I'm just gonna... Lady Gaga is trash, and Steve should feel bad.
But like, dude, at the end of the day, right? You're a fan of the Super Sons comics, and you watched this with your daughter and had a special time. Like, you are set up to enjoy this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I am prepared to be 30 years old, living on my own, watching this at 5 a.m. before I go to a corporate job. This is not for me. This is absolutely not for me. That's why I have nothing to say about it. Like, anything I say just sounds like a dick because, like, this is not my movie. This is like if I was to review, like, a Bratz movie. Like, what would I say? It's a Bratz movie.
But I feel like that's the dig, Steve. Like, that's... it's just this shitty thing movie. No, but it's not a shitty thing movie. It's a good movie.
When did I say the Bratz movie is shitty? I'm saying that this is a genre of thing that I am not equipped to talk about. In the hundreds of movies I watch a year, I never go see a Pixar movie anymore. The only time I go see an animated movie is if it's an animated movie aimed at an adult audience, like a Miyazaki movie. Like, I have not seen Elemental. I have not seen Nimona, I think it's called, the thing on Netflix. Nimona, yeah, that thing. I have not seen any of, like, Seeing Red. I have no intention of watching Inside Out 2. Like, I have not seen anything but the first Frozen. I have not watched a Pixar movie in like 6 years, probably. So this modern era of animation is just not a thing I am interested in, and I have no opinions on it, honestly. I didn't hate this movie. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but like, there's nothing I can say about this movie that goes beyond just, yeah, it's got a story, and it can be enjoyable for a certain audience, and that audience is not me.
How'd you like the design for Big Starro?
That was cool.
Yeah,
I dug that.
Yeah, with like full tentacle and like spiky and shit.
I enjoy the fact that Starro's having a bit of a renaissance lately.
We are in the Starro era.
Like, literally, he's in video games. He's in Suicide Squad movie that came out a couple years ago. He's in this. He showed up in the Justice League comic a little bit. I enjoy the fact that we've brought back the original Justice League baddie, and he's just a giant starfish. It's great.
Yeah. I like it. I like it.
I like him.
Okay. How'd you feel about that
like
scene with Crypto in the Fortress of Solitude? Because, like, one of the things I really enjoyed about this movie is, especially when, like, comparing it to when we talked about the Green Lantern one, where, like, people were just beating the shit out of each other for no fucking reason. Like, they didn't even attempt to talk to each other. I actually really liked the way that the action scenes were paced in this, and I thought that they, like, fit really well, even down to the Crypto scene. I thought it, like, actually kind of made sense within the context of the story that, you know, he is the guard dog for the Fortress of Solitude, and they just have to, like, deal with him for a little bit. I thought it was kind of cool. It was a good action set piece to keep things lively.
I thought that was fun. I enjoyed Damien's quip about the Fortress of Solitude being unlocked by a key, and like how he just scoffs at it. I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, everything in the Fortress of Solitude I thought was a lot of fun. Even when we were talking about like the action scenes, when you have the bit where Lois is coming to pick up John, and Damien immediately is like, "That's not your mom." And John is still kind of tempted to check, and it kind of turns into this like slightly darker thing where she like slowly starts to sound more and more unhinged. I thought that was fun. A lot of the action set pieces that you get where someone like John is kind of like forced to recognize that the person he thinks he's looking at is not really them is good. Damien's kind of like natural paranoid personality starting to rub off on him. I thought all of that was entertaining. Even like going down to like the final big fight with Starro and Superman and the whole team, I thought was entertaining.
Dude, getting to see Damian Wayne beat the shit out of Superman was kind of like my whole existence.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. I like Damien's design a lot.
Yeah, the spiky hair really, like, they went full, like, anime protag hair for him, and I really liked it.
And that's a good modern direction for him, because again, that's kind of what Joshua Williamson does with the Robin comic, is like he just turns him into a shonen protag, and I kind of dig that he's got the big spiky hair in this to match that energy.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of some of the like character designs and stuff, this is animated in like the same style as that Superman Parasite movie that came out a couple of years ago, where it's all CG but it's like cell shaded and it's got like a very particular frame rate. What did you think of the animation of that? I'm not saying it's like groundbreaking or anything, but it's definitely a more distinct direction to go in than I feel like a lot of the New 52 universe animated films were.
I think going forward, they need to keep investing in this style of animating because, number one, it's a lot better than the kind of art style they've been sticking with stuff that like Green Lantern Beware My Power, where the sort of like artistic choice is just vaguely bland, quasi-adult looking character models. Like there's no personality behind them at all. And the problem with that other animation style too, like we talked about in the Green Lantern review, is between the animation and the editing, the pacing is just awful, where characters will say a line and like a full beat goes by before anyone responds, and it completely cuts any tension or gravity from the situation. It completely ruins every joke. As opposed to that, I think you need to throw all that out and continue doing this style, because the thing that they get right here is the movie moves at a clip. Like, it never drags. None of the jokes feel like they're undercut by the delivery where there's too much time between the characters talking. Damien and John's voice actors sound like they actually have a rapport, which is good. The only thing that I would maybe say is I feel like outside of Damien specifically, everyone's character designs are kind of generic. And when you have the animation style with the extra cell shading, I feel like you can kind of afford to go a little bit more dynamic with the costume designs. Batman and Superman look very generic. Batman, Superman. The animation style they use in this is also similar to the one they use for Ruby, and that lends itself to more exciting action scenes too. So you can do that and kind of go more balls to the wall like they want to do with the other animated movies, but can't seem to. But I would also maybe just say, like, you could probably like afford to go against model a little bit more, you know, like maybe try a different costume than just the generic Batman Superman ones and see how it looks in the style.
Yeah, I don't know. I was pretty happy with that. I remember seeing people react to the trailer for it and be like, "Oh no, CG animation." But I don't know. I quite liked it. It seems that Spider-Verse is definitely the thing that has opened up the floodgates, but it's actually kind of traces back to the Lego movie of all things for really playing with the frame rate and animation for a lot of these films, and trying to do some interesting stuff with that. And this has like this interesting kind of clip to it because of that. I'm worried that like some people kind of see it and makes it feel like cheap, but I don't know. I think it just gives it like a kind of a cool vibe, even if it is just trying to replicate things that are doing it much better. I still just really enjoyed it. But also,
cheap is not a bad thing, right? Like, if the CGI animation is like literally cheaper, and that allows you to do more stuff with your budget, then do it. Like, I have no problem with that. The Catwoman animated movie that came out around the same time as this, Catwoman Hunted, that kind of combines CGI action sequences with like a more anime style 2D. The action scenes in that don't look great because the CGI just doesn't mend doesn't mix well with the 2D, but it's a lot more interesting and a lot more memorable because they tried something different, as opposed to something like Green Lantern Beware My Power, where it just looks like someone took all the details out of the drawings. There's just no personality to it whatsoever. When you compare something like Battle of the Super Sons to that, this immediately tops it because you can at least talk about its visual design in a way that's more interesting than whatever the hell Green Lantern was.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't know. I was pretty pleased with this movie all throughout. I'm not going to call it like a perfect film or anything, but this just felt like such a breath of fresh air to me, even if you tell me that there's just so much stuff out there that's not like this. I'm going to say, well, fuck you. This one was all of that, and it was really good. And I'm just going to fucking pick the snootiest fucking up your ass thing ever, Steve. Just do it. Let me fucking at it.
Look, man, I'm sorry. I know you enjoyed this. It's just not my thing.
I don't fucking care. The battle lines have been drawn. The die has been cast, Steve. It's too late. The shit is coming, and it is coming for you.
I mean, you say you're gonna like shit talk whatever I pick next, but like, what do you call the last 6 months of Geeky Gentleman? How could it get any worse?
Damn. I don't know. I like Last Mohicans.
I specifically picked that one because I knew the history element would be interesting to you.
Yeah, good. Fucking pick more stuff that I'll like, Steve.
Alright, as long as you do the same.
No. It's my show, damn it.
One more positive I guess I'll throw out there is I feel like this is a very good pilot for a series. If you released this movie kind of like the Batman Superman World's Finest animated movie that they did for the Timverse, you could take this as like a 3 or 4 episode segment combined, and then just release like a series of like 15 or 20 minute episodes where it's just John and Damian, and I think you'd make insane money off of that. Like, kids would eat that shit up if you just had a Cartoon Network show like this.
I could see it. It would definitely do better than whatever the fuck they're doing with John in the comics at this point. I mean, in all fairness, I've quit reading, comics by and large. So I'm not really one to talk. I don't know what's been going on with him. I just remember the, like, gravitas of disappointment that washed over me as Bendis decided to age John up. And just everything I read with him after that was just such a fucking letdown.
Man, you don't worry. You have years and down to catch up on after that moment.
Years and years of letdowns. Good.
Yes. Tom Taylor has been writing that character for a long enough time where you can sufficiently say there have been years of letdown.
So maybe you should go back and read Super Sons then, when you can see John when he was good and young. And
there was an omnibus that just came out of the Super Sons comics that I was tempted to pick up, but I ended up not doing it. But maybe now I will.
I mean, again, I just really fucking like the dynamic between John and Damian. It's just really fun and refreshing. It's all the Batman, Superman stuff, but like with just the childish pissing contests. And I love that for it.
I mean, it's a little Goten in Trunks, yeah.
Yeah. There's vibes. So yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll call it at that. I'm sorry. I hate everything you say, Steve. I'm sorry. I'm a bad friend. And that
I'm sorry
can't
I didn't like it more.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for apologizing and admitting that I'm right, that it's the greatest film ever made.
Citizen Kane, move over.
Yeah, it goes Battle of the Super Sons, Citizen Kane.
Paddington 2, then Citizen Kane. Don't disrespect my boy Paddington.
You should put that on like a fucking t-shirt. Don't disrespect my boy Paddington. You won't like what's gonna fucking happen to you.
I really should make that into a shirt. God damn, that's a good idea. Fuck, that's what I'll review next. We'll just watch fucking Paddington 2.
Not even Paddington 1. We're not going to go in with any context.
No. We're going to Paddington 2. We're going to the one where he gets thrown in jail. It's gonna be awesome.
Wait, fucking for real?
Yes! That's the movie. It's such a good movie. I swear to God, though. It's such a good movie.
I'm just so perplexed that, like, what a fucking hook. Paddington 2. Paddington goes to prison.
Paddington is framed for a crime he didn't commit and thrown in jail, and then along the way makes friends with all the inmates. It's amazing.
That sounds pretty fucking hype, not gonna lie.
He makes them all marmalade sandwiches, and they become friends. It's awesome.
Okay.
You see the vision?
Yeah. You know, I did want to tell, like, a funny story. So while I was looking for a movie to rent from the library, I came across this, but right next to it, because alphabetical order, was, Be Kind Rewind with Jack Black. And it just, like, made me pause and think for a second of, like, no one knows what that fucking saying means anymore. What a fucking crazy dated ass title is that?
You think you're useless, but have you ever been a DVD rewinder?
Yeah.
I remember when they were selling those at fucking Best Buy.
Okay.
Good time.
Anyway. So yeah, that'll do it for this week's episode. I'll give Battle of the Super Sons a 4 out of 5. Is there a star inside your mouth?
I'll give Battle of the Super Sons 3 out of 5 milked bat cows.
Milking bat cow. Alright. So Alfie wanted to talk about something last week, and then he changed his mind after we got the sad news about Akira Toriyama's death, and then we were going to talk about that this week, but then that didn't happen because he doesn't love us enough to come on the show anymore.
It's true.
So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see if we can get him on next week, if he can fit us into his busy schedule. You know, his fucking unemployed ass schedule. Just gonna start throwing shade because he's not fucking watching this anyway. So yeah, if he can fucking fit us in his busy ass schedule, and then we'll talk about the impact, the passing. We'll talk about Akira Toriyama next week if all goes to plan. All right,
yeah.
Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher,
and I am not championing any oppressed people. I am oppressing people.
Yeah, you are. With your fucking bad takes on movies. And we're your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.